To order this meeting of the Cuyahoga County Safety and Justice Affairs Committee Juvenile Court Advisory Subcommittee on February the 26th, 2025. I'm Judge Ronald Adrian. I'm going to just have the members of the committee initially introduce themselves. Start with my vice chair.
I'm Jennifer Yarum. I'm the Executive Director of Applewood Centers.
Thank you. Judge.
I'm Rob McClellan, former judge in the Common Pleas Court.
Bridget.
Bridget Gibbons, Deputy Court Administrator.
Subcommittee member Marvin Cross is not here today. He's dealing with healing since he had a medical procedure not too long ago, and so we're wishing him the best. He may be able to come on Zoom, but we're understanding if he's not able to make that happen. So we're just sending him good wishes across the board. And having done that, I want to open this up to public comment. Janine, were there any public comments?
Yes, Mr. Chair, we have one. Ms. Hannah Wiltshire.
Ms. Wiltshire?
Hello, everyone, and thanks for having me. I'm Hannah Wiltshire, the Program Director with the CASA program in Cuyahoga County. We were here at the last meeting on January 27th, so I just wanted to come back on, say thank you for hearing our presentation, asking your questions, and I just wanted to reiterate what we do and then state that we submitted a proposal for funding that's still under advisement, so thank you again. We recruit, train volunteers who advocate for the abused and neglected children here in the county who have an open court case with the juvenile court. So we are there, we're very involved in the child's lives, helping with reunification, or if that's not possible, another outcome. So again, I just want to thank everyone, and we submitted our proposal for funding, so thank you for looking over that.
Thank you. Janine?
There's no one else signed in.
Okay, thank you. That being the case, we're going to move on to the next item on the agenda, which is approval of the minutes from January the 27th. Is there a motion?
I'd move approval.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, it's been probably moved and seconded that the minutes from January 27th be approved. Is there any unreadiness on the motion? Any unreadiness on the motion? Any unreadiness on the motion? Hearing none, all those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same side. Minutes are approved. Is there any old business that we need to take up? Very well. Hearing none, we'll move to the next item on the agenda, which is new business. New business on today's date, we'll be hearing from members of a panel with whom we will have some interaction. The panel is made up of both members of the Cuyahoga County Juvenile Court staff and individuals who provide services to that court. And so I'm going to ask that those who are here for that purpose, first raise your hands so I can see who's here. Okay. And then I'm just going to start down the line and ask that you introduce yourselves, give us some idea as to where you work, the length of your tenure at the court, and what kind of roles and responsibilities you have currently and have had in the past.
My name is Darian Johnson. I am a multi-systemic therapy therapist. Been with the juvenile court, I would say, just a couple weeks short of 10 years. My role, as I've mentioned, is in-home therapist.
My name is Gabriela Nieves. I am an intervention specialist with the Early Intervention and Diversion Center, and I've been with the court for a little over a year now. We work to divert the youth's charges.
Good morning. My name is Adam Sornak. I am with the BHJJ Department, Behavioral Health, Juvenile Justice. I work as a Phoenix Court Coordinator. We work with youth with mental health concerns and substance use concerns, hand in hand with our MST department as well as ICT to help youth with mental health. I've been at the court for 2 years, in this role for 2 years. Previously, I was a regular traditional probation officer for 2 years, and then 4 years of experience working with children and family services too.
Good morning. My name is Santino Montanez. I am a placement slash aftercare coordinator with the juvenile court. I've been with the court for nearly 11 years now. Prior to coming over to the placement department about 2 years ago, I had worked in the southeast quadrant of the county, working with higher risk youths who were generally gang involved or had substance abuse issues. Since moving to placement, I work primarily with the kids at Applewood, but I do take kids at CCFs as well. And my job is to ensure that they're getting the most out of their programming and then work with the families on their reentry plan back into the community to ensure their success as well as the safety of the community.
Good morning. My name is Tanisha Walls. I am a supervising probation officer. I cover the Northeast unit, which is all of the communities east of downtown. So Buckeye Shaker, Central, Euclid, Cleveland Heights, just to name a few. I work with the youth and their families while they're in the community, when they're placed on probation. Monitoring behaviors, case planning, overall case management, deal with youth that are also gang involved, substance abuse and mental health, just working with them so that they can complete whatever court orders that they have while they're on probation and preparing them to be successful post-probation.
Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Tamika Potter. I currently serve as the Director of Residential Services at Applewood. I have been at Applewood for almost 11 years now. Prior to being the Director of Residential Services, I was the Clinical Program Manager for our boys unit, which also houses several beds for the juvenile court for the CBI program, which is one of the programs where the youth are able to come to residential treatment instead of serving a sentence at ODYS, so they can receive mental health and substance abuse treatment at our facility.
Okay, so we got lots of questions, and hopefully you guys have lots of answers. I had asked that this panel be constituted because you're the ones closest to the ground, and the ones who are in the best position to kind of give us some overview as to what's working and what could be done better, and maybe to give us some idea as we try to give information back to the county council as to where they could do better as far as providing resources for specific programs. When we first started to take a look at this, there were a dizzying amount and number of programs that apparently are available to the juvenile court to utilize. And I think one of our roles is to try to highlight the ones that are the best of those programs, and therefore are the ones that probably would benefit the most from more support, financially in particular, since that's probably the place where the county is most able to make a difference. And so the questions that we're going to pose to you are going to probably be all over the board. I know I sat down and just off the top of my head, had a whole bunch of questions, many of which are probably not appropriate for you guys given your individual roles, but some of them, even though they may not be appropriate, may be things that you have some ideas about, and some thoughts about as to whether or not they're working. So we're going to just kind of open it up, I think, for some of the questions that we were looking at.
Can I add something?
Go ahead.
So I think, one of the things we recognize is that we can't meet with kids or youth in this setting, and that, it could really be overwhelming for even family members. So helping us kind of be a voice for our youth on what's working, what's not, and also if there are gaps of things where you're seeing trends, right? This kid's gone back home and we just keep seeing this pattern. Maybe we need to look at something that doesn't exist or isn't as prevalent in this community that would help fill those voids and gaps. So I think it just kind of, we appreciate you being here and serving as that kind of voice for us.
Bridget, anything?
Nothing to add. I would just add, we use a lot of acronyms at juvenile court, so if you could try to say exactly what the program is when you're answering. So if it's okay, can I start with one?
Sure.
What do you guys, let's start with Tanisha. Tanisha, you're a supervising probation officer. Can you talk a little bit about some of the things that you're seeing that are struggle areas for young people? And what do you think that the court is missing, needs, how to help young people in the community?
Okay, so I would say some of the things that I'm seeing is just an overall mistrust of court systems in general. So being able to connect with the families and build relationships with them so that they can get whatever services that they may need is definitely a barrier to start. But one gap that I recognize is that I think that there needs to be more community-based programs. A lot of the times, children depend on stuff at school, so more school-based programming that ties directly back to the juvenile court. That way, it's kind of building a full support wraparound system in the community, in schools, in the homes, that type of thing. I think that's the biggest concern that I've seen, just working one-on-one with the youth and the families.
Okay. Bob, you want to start?
No, I'm gonna ride you guys. I like all your questions. Whoever's gonna read them off.
See if like more people want to respond to.
Well, let's just start with the basic questions that I think Bridget put together for us. Can you guys give us some idea as to how you are viewing the impact of the availability of firearms on the populations that you're seeing?
I know for Applewood, I have been there since the very beginning of the CBI program, and so it's been an interesting transition.
Tell everybody about
CBI is Cognitive Behavior Interventions. It's a specialized program that we do that is through the University of Cincinnati. Thinking back to when we first started that program, a lot of the youth did not have gun specifications when we were seeing their charges, but as the years have gone on, it's almost like every other youth that is referred has some type of gun specification charge when we're looking at their file. Also along with the stealing of vehicles. So it also seems like as this has become an issue, there's also more assault charges being attached, so it seems like there's more violent crime, but it is also, we start to see conflict amongst the kids because as we're having kids referred, there's the issue of these youth all know each other in some type of capacity. They may have had issues out in the community, and in some way, guns were involved, someone was injured, and things of that nature. So we've definitely seen an impact on behavior-wise, but it's also caused the increase of trauma within the kids because literally talking to the children, everyone has suffered some type of loss, whether it was a family member or a friend from gun violence.
I agree with everything you said as well, too. Another thing that I wanted to add is the ability to express yourself in social media and whatnot. It is a lot of negative peers that a lot of the youth we work with have, and they are all intertwined, like was mentioned. So it is common for them to want to have a picture with a gun to show that they have, even if they don't own the gun, that they have access to guns, or to give you the false impression that they do have those guns. And a lot of those things are not known by the family. Social media is not often tracked by parents as well as it can be, or being involved or searching rooms. So to work with the families more and being more involved in their kids' life, seeing what they're posting, knowing their social media accounts, knowing who their friends are, like knowing where they're going to spend their time, searching their room, seeing what they have and what they don't have, so that it becomes less hidden and known, if that's the case, to address it further.
And I will agree with Adam. I, of course, multi-systemic therapy therapist. That's what we do. We empower the caregivers, and that's one of the things that we work on is increasing their supervision monitoring of the youth. So I would say if we could have earlier interventions to help parents be able to monitor social media, be more aware of their peer groups, I think that will start the process of maybe beginning to decrease some of the gun violence.
I'll just jump in for the team. So multisystemic therapy is an evidence-based practice. It's an
Yes.
intensive home and family model. It typically stretches like 3 to 9 months, depending on which program you're running. It's not supposed to be more
5
than
for us,
4, but there are 2 different sort of iterations in this community. There's the standard MST program, which treats misdemeanor and felony offense involved youth and in the family structure. And then there's the specific model for problem sexual behaviors. That one tends to last a little bit longer, given that you're dealing with kids who've often victimized someone in the family. It has really great outcomes nationally. There is a very high parental commitment piece. You're in the homes a few times a week, working directly with that family unit. And because you have that captive audience, we've seen a lot of success long-term. So anything you want to add to that, I just
No,
wanted to give
you summed it up
Right,
perfectly.
yeah.
Thank you.
no problem.
I would just like to chime in to praise the efficacy of the cognitive behavioral intervention program at Applewood. Ms. Potter and I work very closely with high-risk youth who are sort of at the end of the line through the juvenile court. They've been on regular probation. They've had the most intensive services that we can offer. And once they make it to a residential placement like Applewood, the only thing left at that point is a community correctional facility or ODYS, Ohio Department of Youth Services. In my time in the last 2 years working with Ms. Potter at Applewood, we've had some kids come in with some serious gun charges who go through the cognitive behavioral intervention program, and we've just seen how well it can work in changing their thought processes, in avoiding risky behaviors, avoiding negative peers, and then when they come out, we work together to develop a reentry plan to ensure that they're continued to be wrapped in services that promote their success in the community. And I mean, there have been just multiple kids that we've seen on a very bad track who go through the program and come out and never pick up a gun again.
What percentage of the kids that are seen at juvenile court actually go through that program?
So in 2024, there were 27 residential placements. I'm not exactly sure how many of those. I would think that most of those are Applewood, the 27, but I don't have that broken up.
Is there a need for more than that?
It's a very specific youth that can succeed in a program like that because they have to, one, have the buy-in and be willing to do it. And a lot of the youths we see are not quite there yet. So I'm not really quite sure how to answer that question.
Any kind of idea what it is that triggers that for why one might be more successful in the program as opposed to somebody else?
That's a multifold problem, but
Right.
I would say that part of it is parental support.
Yes.
Granted, we do have kids with no support who still succeed. Those are some of my greatest success stories. But parental support and then just overall buy-in. A lot of the time, the youth just has to be willing to change and have reached that point where they're ready to be there. You know, they say you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. It's true.
Do you think that the program is adequately resourced?
I believe so. I think the staff at Applewood is exceptional. We work together as a team, so the cohesion between juvenile court and Applewood is excellent. We have monthly meetings to ensure that everyone is supported in every way they need. I can't speak highly enough about the program there.
And so to be clear, at Applewood, within our boys unit, we have 5 dedicated beds for the actual CBI program. And then we have 1 bed in our female unit that is dedicated to the CBI program. So, and I agree with Mr. Montanez, a lot of times it is about the youth's buy-in. Are they ready to change? Are they willing to change? Are they willing to accept the support from our staff, from Mr. Montanez in the juvenile court? But a lot of times also the disconnect comes in with the parents because we understand that some of these parents are already working 2 or 3 jobs to make ends meet, to provide for their child who's in residential placement, but also maybe the children that they have who are still in the home. And so we ask our parents to commit to engaging in family therapy on, a biweekly basis. We ask them to commit to coming to do visitation with their child. And sometimes it's very difficult for them to try to balance all of these things at once. But we also have recognized sometimes too, our parents that we're working directly with, they have mental health issues also. And they've experienced trauma and they are struggling, within themselves to kind of get to a place of betterment as a whole.
So when I asked, what's the program adequately resourced, I also was looking at a funding piece. That is, if I understood what Mr. Martinez was saying to us, there's only a certain population that can actually benefit from this. So expanding the program is not necessarily something, but
I think in some ways it would help to expand, because one of the things we have to look at as the facility that is accepting the youth is we cannot have youth who are co-defendants within our program. So sometimes if we already have a child who is placed within the boys unit and then we get a referral for another youth, but we recognize that they're co-defendants, unfortunately, we have to turn that child away. So if there were more CBI programs or beds maybe at another facility, that would allow that child to still have access to that program and be successful.
So at this point, is Applewood the only facility that's providing that kind of service?
Applewood is the only secured facility in Cuyahoga County with the cognitive behavioral interventions curriculum that they do. So it is something that we fund through targeted reclaim, which is for felony level youth only. It serves as a diversion from young people sent out of county to other out of county community correctional facilities. It also serves as a diversion from ODYS and allows much better family engagement, keeping our POs assigned to the case versus parole officers. It's highly effective, I think, because of the work that Santino mentioned and Tamika mentioned. I actually want to jump over into one of the things. You know, young people, juvenile delinquency is catching a lot of stories in the media. And we know that young people are far less likely to commit a violent offense than their adult counterparts. There are a small number of violent crimes in the community, but they are catching headlines at a disproportionate rate to the offenses they actually commit. And when they do things, it's frightening and scary, and there's victims on the other side of it. But Gabby, you work in diversion. You see kids at the front end. I'm wondering if you could help us correct the way we speak about young people in the media. I think the use of terms like animals, thugs, things of that nature paints a really frightening picture that scares a lot of people. What are you seeing in diversion, and what's been an example of success you've had with a program?
I think it's important to remember that a lot of the youth we're working with are still developing. So they're learning their decision making still, and they might not have the role models to necessarily look up to that are able to help them with that. So hearing that they're animals or other types of names, it's kind of not fair to them when they're just learning from their environments. Something that we see very successful in the diversion center is our mentorship programs. That allows the youth to pair with individuals who are good role models and they have strong backgrounds to, teach them about accountability and responsibility. I think we could use a way more mentorship programs in the diversion center. I think they're very successful.
So in your overall view, would you say that the court's early intervention and diversion center is particularly effective?
Yes, absolutely. Just in 2024 alone, we worked with 1,026 cases, and of those cases, 84% were successfully diverted. When you give families and youth the opportunity to, stay out of the courtroom and actually engage with our community programs, it's giving them the chance to make right on the decisions that they made and see that there's more than just the negative sides of what they see from the court as of right now.
And how are you defining success?
Keeping our youth engaged into the programs, making sure that they're attending. We actually keep monthly contacts with our programs to make sure that the youth are engaged, but really just keeping in contact with them and knowing that, they're taking what you put into the program is what you're going to get out. So it is really important that we get our youth to put more effort into the program so they're seeing something out of it.
So does success also include post-program behaviors? In other words, after somebody completes the diversion program, you track them over a period of time to see whether or not they're back into the system, and what's the count as it relates to that?
I don't have a statistic for 2024 specifically, but I do know from 2020 studies, we found that the recidivism rate was as low as 14.9%. So that means 85.1% of the youth we did work with in that year did not reoffend after diversion was initiated 9 months later. So, or when diversion was first initiated, 9 months later, there was no reoffense. So diversion does work. We just have to give more families the opportunity to go through it.
So how many people, you hear a lot of things about juvenile court, and as Bridget was talking about, mostly you hear really horrific kinds of things that a very small number of people engage in. But how many people that are currently part of either the detention population or the overall population, individuals who are justice system involved at the juvenile level, do you think could benefit from going through the diversion program? And I'm saying this because I'm really looking at trying to figure out how many people can we actually not have to detain.
Right. I would say that as the front door of the court, we do work with more low-risk youth, but we do believe that all youth should have a chance at diversion. So if that's our first stop and we can prevent any further involvement in the court, we want to do that. So we do believe that all youth should have a chance at diversion, yes.
Now, does that include people who've engaged in violent conduct?
We do work with a lot of assault cases as well. I can't go on to say about, higher risk youth, but we do work with some assault cases, yes.
What about the funding for the current funding level for diversion program? Do you think that there are enough financial resources for that program, or is there room for growth?
I think there's absolutely room for growth. Diversion's on the rise over the next couple of years, so the more programs that we can put in place for our youth, the better. Like I had said before, mentorships are very important, more community-based programs. I know one program I specifically like to work with is the Girl Scouts Northeast Ohio. So they not only focus on the normal Girl Scout things like outdoor life skills and pro-social activities, but they do focus a lot on career development, and they work with youth that are interested in STEM. And they primarily have like an east side group. So if we could expand that even more and bring it towards the west side as well, that would really be beneficial. I think overall, implementing more programs and more mentorships will really benefit diversion.
Poverty has been implicated in rise in criminal activity, and particularly as it relates to juveniles. What are you seeing as far as your populations, the populations that you're working with, as it relates to incident of people who are in poverty?
So one thing that I do think is through witnessing, especially and reflecting over the past year and a half of working with families in our program, a lot of barriers and a lot of reasons that success couldn't be more applicable was poverty, was basic needs in a sense too. It's very hard to have a family commit to supervising their child, to making sure they're going to school, to working on mental health, if they're not sure where they're going to get dinner from, if they're not sure where they're going to live, they're being evicted. It's very hard to commit the time to help their needs because that takes precedence, becomes the main need. There is a lot of areas that can be improved. Working hand in hand with multi-systemic therapy, a lot of times we are trying to create a plan and to make sure that we're supervising whatever the specific situation might be for that particular youth that we aren't able to do because of poverty. And we have called places, try to call resources and whatnot, and sometimes we're able to get some immediate help. Sometimes we are not. Sometimes the answer is, here's the address to a shelter to up, your family of 6 to go to. So it's very difficult then to discuss the importance of education and the importance of supervision and monitoring when we're at that level of needs needing to be met.
I was gonna say, I think a significant amount of the youth that come into Applewood, the greater majority are living in poverty. And when we start to kind of process through with them their behaviors, their crimes, one of the common themes we continue to see is, I did not know where I was gonna get my meal from, so I stole X, Y, and Z so that I could feed myself, I could feed my younger siblings. I did not have clothing as a whole. And so sometimes also when we have them in our facility, it is a culture shock to know that you will get 3 meals, 2 snacks. You don't have to worry about if you'll have a roof over your head because we will provide all of these things. So we see a lot of kids who are in like fight and flight mode and they don't know how to come out necessarily. And so we do this wonderful work with CBI, and then we send them back into these poverty communities and put them right back with these same individuals who were negatively impacting them to begin with, or their mother who is still trying to manage, or their father or their grandparent who's working 2 or 3 jobs. And so one of the disconnects that like myself and Mr. Montanez and our treatment team have been talking about is the lack of programming for the parents, more kind of intensive, maybe financial literacy or things around job components or higher education for our parents. So while their child is placed in residential treatment for 6 months or maybe 9 months or whatever the case may be, they're also being able to kind of grow within themselves to create a better environment for their child to return to.
Can I ask a question, Darian, to you? Darian, you have spent a long time in folks' homes. You've probably put in the most time in people's homes. Can you give us sort of, to speaking to that regarding poverty, a little bit how, as a therapist, you help stand families up to create safety for their young person being in the home and how that looks? And give just a quick example of how the importance of being a clinical person in the home for young people is different than in the adult system, if you could.
Of course, being clinical in the home, you just see things a lot different. It's just not about, okay, this kid is displaying these antisocial or delinquent behaviors, so therefore this kid is evil. It's just more so with us getting to the root and really understanding that, hey, poverty is a driver. Hey, trauma is a driver. So us being in the home and working with the family to help them get through it is very important. Mm-hmm. It's a game changer. As far as, what else did you want? I'm sorry, Rich.
How does it benefit to be in the home? Because we have a shortage of Darian Johnsons in the world, and we're looking for our MST therapist and our ICT therapist coming out of graduate school, like to get in the trenches versus sitting in a Zoom appointment. Young people involved in juvenile justice don't do well by Zoom therapy. They need Darians in their lives.
So it's important for us because we are in the trenches. We're in the homes. So we know exactly how they are living. We understand their struggles. And for us, yes, we provide therapy, but at times it feels as if we are social workers in a way, to where we have to point them in regards to poverty to where the collab is, where a food pantry is, because again, that takes away from them being effective in regards to just parenting. So for us to be there, we are almost like a glue in a way until we're no longer that, because again, we're not providing this treatment for us to continue providing this treatment. We are providing this treatment so that the parent can have enough resources and support around them so they can say to myself, Mr. Johnson, we have at this point in regards to, those things. But in regards to just the systems, MST, we work with multiple systems, okay? So we work with school, we work with the community, we work with peers. It's multi-systemic. And for us, working with the caregivers, we are tying them to those systems, and we are assessing the drivers to the youth behavior. So we're in the homes, we're in the schools, we're in the communities, and we're really examining what is going on with this child. What are the family struggles?
So let me ask you this. How many people are working in your section?
Okay, so we have the capacity for 8 therapists and 2 supervisors. Right now, we have we have 3 therapists and 1 supervisor. So right now, we are in desperate need of, therapists and supervisors, because I believe in the work that we do. It's just bringing people in, because I will say this work is not easy work at all. MST is 24/7 in regards to emergencies. So this, I know that is a high burnout. And for me to be MST therapist for almost 10 years is almost unheard of in a way. So, yeah, I mean, bringing more people in is something that we desperately need, because, again, I believe in the therapy and the work that we do, because we've seen positive outcomes. In fact, we've seen great outcomes when it comes to families.
100%. I mean, the most intensive home family-based models, like MST, have the greatest success long-term. I think the challenge that we've seen in this community is this shift away from going out into the community, out into the home, right? We lost a lot of the behavioral health workforce in the last 5+ years to remote
Telehealth.
therapy, telehealth,
Yeah.
private practice from home. And we know you can't treat a kid in a vacuum, right? Our kids need a system around them. We cannot treat a kid without some positive adult figure or somebody they can depend on, or someone to provide their basic, resources. And I think that one of the successes that we've always seen in a community-based model or parenting is you're going to them, right?
Yes.
You're removing some of those barriers like transportation and access to how am I going to get there? Because let's face it, like, we don't have the greatest public transportation system for our families to get
Absolutely.
places, right? So lots of times I have to lug 6 kids to this appointment, so I'm not going to make it. And so I'm interested in knowing, are there resources to help families kind of get to appointments, get to places within the court? Is there something that we could do to help our kids, so they're not walking from point A to the rec center when they're most vulnerable to their peers in the community and to gun violence? Are there ways we can get kids to some of these programs safely? I know some of us have very limited transportation, but I do think that's part of the challenge, right? So I'm
Yeah,
interested in
I
hearing.
mean, I don't know.
So for us, we're able to use some of the reclaim money for gift cards. With this, I'm speaking specifically about the CBI program. I just had an incident last week where we have a youth who's in the program he's like the star of the CBI program. Awesome kid. He's been thriving and succeeding and doing so well, but due to transportation issues, his mother was unable to pick him up he was starting his home passes. That's part of the reentry program is you go through a series of community passes and then home passes, overnights, and so forth, to reintroduce them into the community. And for 3 weeks, she was unable to come get him to do these passes. So we had to get creative, and Ms. Potter and I worked on it, and I was able to use one of the gift cards that we have allotted for these kids to drop it off to mom at her apartment so she could Uber there to pick him up and get him home, and then Applewood dropped him back off. So there are creative ways to work around parents' inability to pick kids up sometimes or drop them off if you're creative enough and you're trying hard enough. So we do have some resources for that.
So I want to talk to you guys, and all of you, about money. Because when it gets right down to it, as I think I've said on another occasion, at the end of the day, it's almost always about the Benjamins. Okay. So out of the programs that you work with now, can you give us some idea as to which ones are most cost-effective and which ones you think would be more effective if they had more dollars to work with?
Yeah, so Mr. Johnson touched on it before too. So with our program in Phoenix Court under the BHJJ umbrella, we work with intensive in-home services like MST, as well as with Belfair, partnering with Belfair in integrated co-occurring treatment. That also provides very similar team, family-oriented in-home services. So having the mental health side, having additional therapists, having more options there, it just expands the ability to have better success and better outcomes across the community, working with all different charges from high felonies to low misdemeanors. what we can give into the families and what we can eliminate as the easy struggles, the locations that I can't come to meet with you, we will come to you.
Right.
Eliminating those things too. Additionally, we also work with some grassroots programs over the past few years who have started working up quickly on, I believe, a lot of these programs that we see that have the most success, that have the quickest fill up, if you will. Everyone wants to be a part of that program because their friend told them about it or they hear about it those ways. They quickly adapted to understanding the problems of transportation or whatever the situations may be. So they will provide transportation to a lot of the youth.
And which program is this?
Several different types. We have a few, for instance, we work with Renounce Denounce is a program. Nerve DJ is another program with several DJs who have a recording studio and work with youth on how to record, what goes into that want to work on their music career. Legacies Empowered is another program a lot of people like to work with. They can help teach boys and girls how to, do hair, do nails, to start those things to get certified and help them get certified. And then you build relationships at these places too. And they provide transportation too, so they will drop off, pick up too, which is another easier sell to the family of you don't have to worry about taking your child here, like they'll come and get him.
Yeah.
To help expand, parentless supervision, if you will.
So funding for transportation is kind of critical.
Definitely.
Yes, definitely. Yeah.
Without that, a lot of times it's a quick shutdown of I can't make that happen.
Right.
We see that as well on the diversion side, that transportation can be an issue for a lot of families as well. So providing transportation is definitely very important.
In my experience, I think more funding for programs that offer job readiness is crucial. The kids that I see the most success with are the ones that we get involved in those kinds of programs. I've got a youth on my caseload right now who is a high-level felony case who has been through Applewood, and he's also been through a community correctional facility at this point. And I've got him wrapped in services through Spine and Sport Institute, working with him on job readiness, and he's also enrolled in Workforce 360 through Ohio Guidestone, where he's getting he's going to get his diploma from high school. He's also going to get construction certifications so that he can get right into the workforce, and they help him with job placement as well. And now this is a kid who we struggled with. He got through the programming okay, but he wasn't ready to change his behavior. He was one of those kids who knows how to talk the talk, but when it came time to walk the walk, he wasn't walking it. But now that he has come around and he's wrapped in these services, he is in love with the programming. This is a kid who wouldn't wake up to go to school. His mom would have to go search for him. He'd be hiding in the basement or something. And now he's getting up on time and going on his own to Workforce 360 because he sees a future in it. So letting some of our kids know that they do have a future and involving them with programs that sets them up for that future is totally key to their success.
Yeah.
And I'll piggyback off of what they've spoken to. In supervising probation, we meet with the kids at home, in the community, school, so on and so forth. Transportation is definitely a barrier, whether it's coming to meet your probation officer or go to court dates or just to get to school daily. So in the probation department, we do offer bus tickets sometime for the kids to get back and forth to school. So definitely have to think outside the box when it comes to helping these families get the basic needs met. When it comes to things that need additional support, definitely education. Sometimes the youth don't want to go to school because they're afraid to ask for help. And sometimes the parents don't know how to advocate properly for them. So I've sat in on IEP meetings in place of the parent because they didn't know what topics to speak to when it comes to IEP meetings. So again,
IEP.
it's individual
Individualized
education plan. Yeah, so that if they need any additional supports, whether that's tutoring or smaller class sizes, a lot dealing with some kids who have educational disabilities. Sometimes parents don't recognize that. Getting a doctor's appointment to be able to get that diagnosis. Again, sometimes they don't know where to start. So in supervisor probation, we do support the youth and their families in making sure that they get whatever support they need for all of those different areas.
Now, how well resourced is the court's probation department?
So there is definitely room for growth. In my unit in particular, we're down 2 probation officers. And prior to me actually starting officially working as a probation officer, I interned for a year and a half just to kind of see what kind of struggles the department had. And it's burnout is definitely a thing. You're dealing with stuff that the kids are dealing with, stuff that no kid is equipped to deal with. So it's hard for the youth and their families, and it can be have a very heavy impact on probation officers as well. So there's definitely room for growth when it comes to funding, just so that we can keep people.
Yeah.
So is heavy turnover?
Heavy is probably a little high, but there's definitely turnover.
I just want to add, if you can, one of the things I want to elevate is if you can hear the ways that the folks around the table who are participating in our panel are dealing with really large societal issues. They look like mentors and coaches themselves. They talk about young people understanding the underlying trauma, the needs, not just focusing on the deed, that they are doing some complex work. A probation officer caseloads for working with juvenile probation have to be smaller caseload size because of the amount of work. They're not sitting in offices waiting for kids to show up. They're out in the community. They're in the schools. They're helping with school meetings. Tanisha talked about individual education plans. They're making sure kids have Medicaid enrollment. They're making sure families have health insurance. This is not come in, check in, take a drug screen, go home. These people are doing in-depth work. So we are desperately in need of more probation officers that look more like coaches and mentors and case managers like you've heard today. So I just want to shout that out because I'm not sure they know any different. It could be better, right? So we could have smaller caseload sizes where you can do this work. I do want to ask, you guys talk about this. What do you think that, and I appreciate Judge Adrian, you asked about cost savings and efficiency. One of the things that we used to do back in the day, and I fear that we're moving back in that road too, is, that somehow just being tough on crime gets the job done. And we've been there. We know that that approach skyrocketed youth violence and adult violence. These guys are doing the work. They're in the trenches. What do you think people are getting wrong about that approach? And what would you like to say to those people to say, no, it's more complicated than that. We have to do the things that we're talking about. Tell me a little bit about when we've done it wrong and how much worse it got when we detained a kid that didn't need to be detained, or we sent a kid to, a secured, locked facility maybe that didn't need to be.
So I was going to touch on that too, Bridget, on what you were saying there. You have to always step back and realize the situation you're in with each individual family, knowing that parent's history. A lot of the parents we work with were remanded at some point too as a juvenile, and they know what they were charged with, and they see what their child's charged with, and they wonder, why aren't they locked up? Like I was, they should be too. And I believe for a lot of the parents that we work with, they think that, and because it happened to them, that being locked up is a good way to get disciplined. It's a good way to learn your lesson. We hear it every day, I bet, scared straight, and how that's going to help motivate the youth. When in reality, we know what it's like in the detention center, through talking to our youth that are down there. They meet people that they wouldn't have normally known. If you live, for instance, on the west side, and now you're in the DH, you're with everyone in Cuyahoga County, or vice versa. So it expands your population of negative peers as well, too, and does not provide much, support. There's a lot of kids in there. It can be overcrowded at times. So getting the individual needs that you have to address, which is what we try to do in our program. We try to work with the mental health side of it. So to instead of, and like school meetings especially, you hear it every time. This is the problem kid. This kid is the behavior problem. He or she always does this. This is why they've been suspended 100 times. Look at this. Instead of asking them, why they are acting out, why they are frustrated, why they don't come to school, whatever it may be. So working as the team to learn the family so we can advocate for them to understand what this particular child is going through. He knows when he's going to get yelled at, he's going to go home, he's going to get suspended, he's going to have no one looking over him, and I proved you right. I am the failure you see. And instead of that, what can we do to try to correct behavior and address that mental health need?
So Bridget, excuse me, optimally, what is the size of a probation caseload?
I think it's 12 to 15. We feel like 15 would be workable. Annie Casey, I'm looking over at our Chief of Probation Services. Annie Casey recommends a caseload size of 12. Yeah, I think we'd be happy 15.
What are you running now?
Average caseload, about 20 to 30. 30 what? Low 30s. So about double the size that we think would be helpful.
So if the county was to allocate additional resources for probation, how many officers would you like for them to add to the caseload? To your.
I think I got to run that back and come back to you. I definitely will. We will get back to you on that. We got to run the numbers on that. What would also help is continuing to divert misdemeanor offenders. So we still have about 30% of kids on probation that are on for a misdemeanor offense. So successfully diverting those young people would help reduce caseload sizes of probation officers.
And we're doing the research to validate that when you do these diversions, that you get better outcomes.
Absolutely. We run data all the time. The state, because we use funding from the state requires us to do what Gabby talked about, measure your success at program completion, but then go further, look a year out, how many of those kids in that specific program recidivated. For most of our programs, we can pull that information.
And some of that's in the report that you did for us in one of our first meetings too, right? You were going to say something, Santino?
I didn't mean to cut you
Oh,
off.
no. I was just going to address Bridget's question about, the tough on crime thing. It doesn't work because juvenile delinquency, it doesn't work because juvenile delinquency is a symptom. It's not the problem itself. The problem is trauma. The problem is poverty. The problem is the cyclical involvement in the juvenile justice system. So if we can get more funding to have more therapists like Darian in the house to help parents break that cycle, and to address the problems before they get to the point of involvement in the court, then we have no crime. So cracking down on crime doesn't work. Cracking down on trauma and poverty, and that whole cycle is what works.
So somebody mentioned Reclaim. You want to give us some ideas to what that acronym?
Man, golly, I think it's reinvestment. I don't know. I'll have to Google it.
You don't have to give me the
It
specific.
is the
what is
state
it
fund.
about?
So this is state funding from the Ohio Department of Youth Services that goes to counties, that helps counties stand up programs like Phoenix Court, our mental health court, our Safe Harbor docket, our community-based intervention center, which is a day report program, our multi-systemic therapist, our early intervention diversion center, any of our sex offender treatments, drug and alcohol treatments, mentoring services, grassroots agencies, cognitive behavioral intervention or treatment center at Applewood Centers. Basically, what the state does is we know that kids that go to DYS, we might as well send them to Harvard. What we pay for a kid to be housed at ODYS for a year. It's a really, really bad use of funding and planning. The things like what Darian's doing when we can braid Medicaid funding in with court funding is significantly cheaper and more sustaining and cost effective than sending a kid to a locked correctional facility. So the state reinvested their funds to say, we're doing a really bad job. We're not keeping communities safe. Since Reclaim's been in place, the statewide felony adjudications have dropped significantly. We have found ways to invest in programs like the ones discussed today to keep kids in their communities with their families and help them to reduce violent offenses. So what it does is really helps communities use this type of funding to address and stand up programs in the counties so that kids don't end up going to DYS. I think there's been some misconceptions of what Reclaim is that's been poorly relayed, that somehow it is jeopardizing community safety. Not factual, untrue. It actually increases community safety. Since Reclaim's been in place, we've had less violent offenses. Now, I will say one of the things that's happened recently that's caught a lot of headlines, we spoke about it today, guns. The availability of guns is really different than when I was a Darian Johnson myself. You know, every kid has availability to gun with ease. So when COVID hit and we took away the safety net for young people, schools, DCFS, therapists, parents' recovery groups, AA, Al-Anon for caregivers, safe spaces for people. Doors were shutting during COVID and kids were lingering and falling out of school. Of course, young people we were going to see something. And what we did see is an uptick in violent crimes for young people. Aggravated robberies, car thefts, murders did go up. Now, most of the country and large cities are seeing a reduction in violence now after COVID's beginning to settle. Cleveland, because of the rate of poverty, is slower to recover. But again, I think that goes back to poverty. So Reclaim is used to do all of this effectively, keep communities safer. That's
I'll
it.
just jump in. So, and correct me if I'm wrong, Bridget, so there's two buckets of Reclaim predominantly, like targeted Reclaim, which deals with more felony offense or felony involved youth, whereas there's also standard Reclaim, which is used on some of the front end diversion programs, Project Calm, which is for like first time or low level domestic violence cases. I got in a fight with grandma, I stormed out of the house, I refused to come home, right, to help prevent those kids from further involvement. And the other thing the court has done, and I would really like to have you guys talk a little bit to this, is sort of removing some of the programs from being housed, you know, in Quincy or in the building, you know, using Metzenbaum, using community locations more for families on the diversion side of things, and sort of what impact do you think that that's had, being kind of not necessarily like where dropping you at the front door where the detention center is an option, right? I think that's been a move that you guys have kind of tried to move away from, and I'm interested to hear your thoughts on that.
I think the court process is scary in general for a lot of families and a lot of youth. So not having our programs directly in the detention center, in the juvenile court and in Metzenbaum is great. It's giving us the opportunity to go back to this like community village that we've stirred away from over the years. Having these programs directly in our communities close to where they live and the people that they know, they're developing relationships with them. For example, like our community diversion programs that are local or linked directly with local police departments. I like those because, you know, it's helping the youth develop relationships with the police officers in their communities. So it's getting to know the people around you rather than dropping them off at this big scary building and saying, here, go walk in, you know. So I do think it's beneficial.
And from an investment piece, right, it's cheaper to keep kids at home with
Yes.
their families in the community than in the detention center.
Yes.
Right.
So I've got, go ahead.
I was just going to add on to that briefly, too, with the importance of in-home therapists and in-home programs, too. I don't believe you can possibly do your job well or understand a family unless you are in their home, unless you see the day-to-day, the living situation, who all lives there, what's the chaos level, what's the support level, where do we live, are we scared of our neighbors, like understanding these basic things to help with them, too. So just knowing that, we are asking them to meet with us more, meet with our therapists more. So knowing that information to make it easier to meet with them, to communicate with our providers, work with them to make sure we're doing things together and not making extra work for the family, and using the time that they're giving us to really dedicate to helping their time.
So I've got two questions because we're at and after our time limit. So I've got two real quick questions I want to ask you guys, and then we're going to call it a day. So the first is, can you discuss the effectiveness of the court's Care First Cuyahoga initiative, if you know how that works? And allegedly it aims to address disparities affecting Black youth who are underserved and over-criminalized by the juvenile justice system and other child-serving agencies. Are you familiar with it at all?
No, no.
Okay, so that's an administrative level question.
So,
Trend around.
yeah, I think they can speak to the importance of intentionally trying to divert young Black youth away from the youth justice system. I think they can speak to how they show up at a disproportionate level. So we are still in the planning phase of the Care First Cuyahoga, where we're bringing together our youth-serving stakeholders, some of our grassroots agencies, our community partners like the City of Cleveland, to take a look at where are the gaps in our systems, kind of like we're talking about today, where are programs maybe over-resourced and underutilized, where are there under-resourced programs that we could utilize more. So we're still in the planning phases with the help of third sector and our partners at Catalyze Justice. We'll be convening these meetings to help do a gap analysis, resource mapping, to create a new continuum of care to divert intentionally young Black youth away from the youth justice system because they are in marginalized communities with very little resources. So trying to give them a leg up and opportunity to be successful in lieu of diverting, in lieu of coming to the court system. So I think they'll begin to see that once we get out of the planning phase, and some of them will be participating in that.
Okay. Then my last question to you is there anything that you've been wanting to say for a long time that we didn't ask you?
I don't have anything.
Okay.
I think also in terms of like, is there a service gap that we just don't know enough about, or a trend that you're seeing that like we could help address that would help support our kids' success when, you know, they're in the community?
I mean, if you could go in front of county council and say, this is what we need, what would you tell them?
I would say one thing we need more in-home therapists, more streamlines to services. Mr. Johnson mentioned it. Right now, they have a team available of 10 therapists. Right now, we have 3. So say we have all those services full. We have a family that is having their first court case and being able to address them right there. We have this service. This is what we're going to try to aim to do. Are you interested? You know, getting the buy-in alone and the dedication from these families is intensive. We're asking for 4 to 6 hours a week for 3 months to a half a year.
Yep.
You know, we're in your life. We're going to be in your house constantly. So when you get the buy-in to then have it, you know, where we don't have the providers, we don't have the ability to streamline things while that's there, and maybe there's a wait situation. So then reconvening with the family in 2 months, 3 months, saying, remember that thing we talked about a while ago? You know, I know your son has been having issues, but now we want to try to help. It just helps create that distrust that, you know, we said we wanted to help and then we weren't able to follow through because of availability.
Yeah. And with that availability at times, youth can also get into even more trouble. So to have the in-home therapist and, you know, so that probation can funnel them to us so we can immediately address whatever issue is, I would say definitely important for us.
Outside of court resources, I would like to see more availability of free pro-social activities in the communities, like especially through rec centers. I mean, the major issue with most of our kids outside of poverty is that they have no activities. They have nothing to do. And through that boredom, you wouldn't believe how many times we hear, I did it because I was bored or I had nothing to occupy my time. Unstructured free time is the worst thing that most of our kids can have. So if we could get more athletic activities, more arts activities, things like that to occupy their free time that is low to no cost, I think we would see a major difference.
I think I agree with everything everyone has said. I think we also, as a community, have to really take a look at the youth and recognize how there are multiple things going on. We have kids who are one of 11 who have suffered abuse and neglect. They don't know where their next meal is coming. So, as a society or as a community, we need to really take a look at what is going on with the kids that we are seeing on a day to day that are ending up on the news, that are ending up in the juvenile court. But we also have to look at our classrooms are packed. They're not getting the individualized attention that they need in the classroom. Everyone is not a bad kid in the classroom. They might have ADHD and need medication or extra support. And Bridget kind of touched on with COVID, we saw an increase in mental health concerns in COVID because people could not go out and interact with one another. Kids lost their safe space of going to school and not having to be in that abusive home or around that abusive parent or whatever the case may be. And so we need more activities for our youth that help them learn how to be pro-social, how to navigate life, how to interact with one another, how to get all that extra energy that they might have in their body out so that they can continue to grow and be successful, whether that be financial literacy, whether that be post-secondary education options, whether that be mental health services, whether that be job training or whatever it may look like, because it doesn't look the same for every child, and meeting the family and the child where they are at.
Okay. Well, I want to thank you all for coming in today and sharing your insights and your time with us and to help us get to the point where we can make solid recommendations to the county as it relates to what they can do better to help you do your jobs better. And hopefully, once we get our final report together, it'll reflect the best of what you have told us. And hopefully, the people who are actually the decision makers, because all we can do is advise, will take what you're saying to heart and do what needs to be done in order to make it better for the kids in Cuyahoga County that are our justice system involved and their families. Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
I just real quickly, I do want to thank you guys for participating. I think you're a great representation of the hard work that goes into the work at juvenile court. Lots we talked about too were larger societal issues. So I know that oftentimes the attention is what's juvenile court doing, what's juvenile court doing is what's juvenile court doing, but I think that's sort of the wrong question. I think it's what are we doing as a society as a whole to help young people, and I think you guys did a really nice job of articulating the complexity that you deal with, and a system like juvenile court cannot be the only ones at the table holding the bag of responsibility. And I think we've got a lot of really good partnerships across the county with our law enforcement, with our community providers, and our grassroots agencies, have really, I wish, people could see what you guys get to see. So thank you for your time today. I know you all have busy jobs and a lot of responsibility back at the office. So just want to thank you guys for your hard work and being here today.
Hey, Judge, can you hear me?
Yeah. Hey, Marvin, how are you?
All right. Sorry I couldn't be there with you guys. If I can ask one thing or make one suggestion,
Sure.
I do a lot of work with like some of the rec centers. Even though it's a city of Cleveland, sometimes we have to do a cooperative together because they're looking for youth right now. And so maybe it might be worth talking to the commissioner. If somebody, you can give them my number, I can hook you up with the commissioner because they got all these rec centers across the city, and you might be able to get you some more activities because they are hurting for kids.
So kids are not coming to the rec centers?
No, they don't have to participate. And before I went to the police department, I worked for the recreation department for 7 years.
Uh-huh.
And it's nowhere near like it used to be. The programs that they got, they are not being attended like they used to be.
So is this another one of those situations, Marvin, that folks were talking about a little bit earlier, where having access to adequate transportation might be something that would help.
Well, it could be that, or some of them might even, no matter what community they live in, they got a rec center.
Okay,
There's a rec center in almost every community in this city.
okay,
So, just getting hooked up with the recreation department and see what each center is offering that could help.
okay. Sounds like a plan. I wanted to, before we adjourn, just talk about next steps and where we are. Is there any other group, are there other groups that we need to hear from before we start to sit down and actually put together this final report? Anybody that you can think of? Marvin, were you able to have the FBI reduce the information that they wanted to give us to writing?
They were working on it, and some orders came that kind of overrode it, if you know what I'm talking about. They got some difficulties right now.
Don't we all?
We talked about doing a youth survey too, remember? So I'm not sure if that's something we still want to do. Getting feedback from kids that are involved in the justice system on what they need and what's working for them.
Do we have any issues with being able to do that, Bridget?
No, usually when we do a youth or family survey, we'll post it in our probation diversion, and our staff will send it to families and try to work to get engagement. And so I think that's something we can put together relatively quickly. We'll just need the committee to come up with the questions. And we'll work with our IT department to create the survey link, collect the data, and provide a report back out to us. So that can be our next steps. I think we're getting ready to wind down towards recommendations. So I think that was the only other thing we talked about.
So can I ask that we try to put together that survey within the next week?
Yep.
Okay.
I think Jen, you and I had a couple questions I think we were throwing together on that, so yeah.
Okay.
We will get it done.
Let's try to do that, and then at the next formal meeting of the subcommittee, I think we need to do a deeper dive as to what's going to be in our report.
Mhm.
And the goal is to try to get this all done by the end of March, right? Which I think is ambitious at best. It's ambitious. Okay. But let's see where we are at the end of next week, and if we can all be thinking about what we would like to see in the report, and we can talk about it then, because I'm trying to see how we meld all of the things that we got from you on the front end, Bridget,
Yeah.
with things that we've heard from the various groups that we've talked about, and then to reduce that down to the things that absolutely positively will be things that the county will at least give serious consideration to.
I'm thinking about the Ohio work group. They did a really nice job of sort of capturing one meeting at a time and providing bullet point overviews of what was discussed. And within there, when we had public comment, each public comment submitted a request or a recommendation. I think Janine's been already working on this, having the hyperlinks. And I think what I'd like to do with our work group report is don't reinvent the wheel. We saw what the Ohio work group was able to do. We kind of template it very similarly. We talk about here's what was discussed at week 1, include the hyperlink to the resource or letter. Here's what we discussed at week 2. And then the final end of it will be, what we heard sort of persistently, consistently. And our decision will be, what can county council respond to? I know there's been a lot of discussion of different topics that county council, it may not make a recommendation for, so we can just kind of put those in an area that it's, we as the subcommittee are going to make recommendations on what county council can respond to.
So should we aim for like 2 weeks to get back together just as a subcommittee to start working through that? If we want to make that end of
Sounds like a
March
plan.
goal?
Let's see, what is that? 26th. We'd be looking at the 12th of March. Oh, wonderful.
Sorry,
Uh,
I'm in a good place too.
You on vacation?
Yes, sir.
Oh, okay. Okay. Well, we wouldn't want to impinge upon that. Following week would be the 19th. Are you back then?
I'll make it work.
Okay.
Works for me.
Because that only gives us 2 weeks after that to actually, and boogie on down.
We'll be working on those hyperlink reports before.
Judge, and I'll be back in action by then.
How are you doing, by the way? I meant to ask you, but you just kind of jumped in. I didn't expect to hear
Hey,
you.
hey, look, you see?
Okay.
Yeah, I go to the surgeon today, so that'll be my first day out of the house since the 13th.
Okay. Okay.
I gotta get back so I can take care of Judge McClellan. You know, I can't leave him by himself.
Morning, I think is probably good. It's 10
Excuse me,
a.m.?
I'm sorry, the 19th, we're gonna probably have committee meetings. So, the 20th or the 21st.
20th is better for me too.
Okay. Okay, well, it's a conflict for me, but I'll clear it. 11 o'clock on the 20th?
And
I'm
just so
good for
that,
that.
and I'll be out of the country that week, but I will ensure there's council staff coverage.
Okay, thank you. Okay,
Judge said that's the 20th at what time?
it'll be at 11 o'clock.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I was saying that day works for both rooms. So you can let me
Good.
know if you wanna be in here, or if you wanna be in chambers, either way.
For what we're gonna do, I don't think it makes a lot of difference, because we're gonna be talking about the way forward. So we're not gonna have somebody coming in. So, I'll let you flip the coin, okay? You tell us, okay? All right, is there any other miscellaneous business that we need to take care of before we bring this to a halt? Hearing none, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Probably moved and seconded that this meeting be adjourned, and it